I'll be periodically watching and listening to debates that center around philosophy and theology, and kind of putting a review of the debate, see if it's worth your time to check them out, see if any ideas spawn in my head as I'm watching them, and get on here and talk about them and either be insightful or be foolish. One of the two, hopefully insightful. So, right now, I'm going to try to cover Justin Briley's unbelievable debates in the big conversation from 3 years ago. It's the third episode. An illusionist, cannot remember his name off the top of my head. Richard Coles was the Christian. Darren's, I think, was the name of the atheist, and they were debating meaning. Now, I'll give you a review of the debate. And I'll do that for this one. I'll do this by reviewing covering who the winners and the losers were. The winner of the debate was no one. No one won the debate. The loser of the debate was anyone who watched the debate or listened to it. It was really bad. Justin Briley, the moderator, is a class act as always. He's awesome, but some of the blame has to fall on him. He did not keep them on task. Unfortunately, they just seem to talk around meaning. And you would think some big issues would come up if you have two people debating meaning. What's the difference between meaning and purpose? You know, that's a tough one. That's not an easy question to answer. And do a word search on Google, which is what I did, and not everyone agrees on the exact difference. I'm not even going to try to talk about that. I'm just going to, sorry, but trying to put myself in a position to make this a little more stable. I'm not even going to try to talk about it. It's so complicated. It didn't even come up. The atheist sort of was like an atheist stoic, and he was sort of just kind of nuancing stoicism a little bit. It really was not a big deal. The Christian, I thought, again, kind of the same thing. He just didn't really have much to say about meaning, and nor was he really pressed on it that much. Now, that might just be my perception. By the end of the debate, by the end of the debate, I just felt that if you had gone to the debate to really look for an answer here, you really weren't going to find it. Now, not that always happens in a debate, but a debate's about more than changing someone's mind. Okay, debate can be about elucidating a point by having it contrasted by another perspective. That's my favorite thing about a debate. That happened a little bit, but not with meaning being the centerpiece of the conversation. It just sort of was like, well, this guy Coles is a Christian now, and this guy is an atheist, and one was a former pop star. Coles was a pop star, British synthwave pop star back in the 80s. I didn't like much of what I heard of that. And the other guy's an illusionist who's a former Christian. And all I will say, as far as maybe some thoughts, food for thought it may have given me, was when it comes to, better yet, let me do an illustration. So back in the 90s, I took my first and last ever back-to-back vacation weeks. I'll never do that again. Your vacations are over with. You don't get any more until months later. But one of the weeks I used to visit my mom in Pennsylvania. And on the way there, I passed under this series of overpasses, sort of like the Spaghetti Junction here in Louisville. And something clicked. Like I had seen this before, even though I'd never been to Pennsylvania in my life. And it was weird. It was like something I had seen in a dream, but I couldn't quite place my finger on it. And it was hours later when I arrived at her house, I said, I don't know what happened to me. It was weird. just the series of overpasses that were interlinked. I still remember it was a really strange experience. That was probably 1997, 1998. Maybe even 1996. I don't know what happened there. To this day, couldn't tell you. No idea. And it felt meaningful. And that's something I think is really interesting about the concept of meaning. Meaning, something can be meaningful and yet have zero propositional content. And what I mean by that is that something can be meaningful, quote unquote, but we don't necessarily have to know what the meaning is to believe that it's meaningful. Does that mean that it is meaningful? Not necessarily. But think about the word for a minute. Well, if it's meaningful, shouldn't we know the meaning of it? I mean, maybe not, you know? What about purpose? Now, meaning, the word translated, I think, as logos. Purpose translated as telos. And telos is just where we get our word teleology. It just means the outcome, the final, something's put into purpose, and whatever that outcome is was its purpose, okay? So it's a, we have, I'll show it over here, we have what's called a K-loader. I don't think you can see it. There it is, kind of hidden behind the mirror there. If you were to look at this thing, you would go, well, you could look at it for a minute and you'd say, oh, it's an elevator of some kind. You'd be right. It elevates these big cans up to the top of the planes. And you could kind of just from looking at it discern its purpose. Right? It has a clear telos. Another thing I think is interesting out here is we have hand signs for, telling vehicles to go certain places. Somebody's trying to get through here, so I may have to go. But hands, and they're universal. You can go to any international airport anywhere, and through here. Want to get here? You go to any international airport anywhere, and those symbols are the same. K-loaders are pretty, I think, in every international airport as well. Point here is that these things have a clear purpose. And they also, you can make a case they have a meaning. Right? So, I thought that kind of came out of the debate. For me anyway, it kind of gave me something interesting to think about. But in the end, if you're looking for a good debate on meaning where the two actually have conflicts and the discussion is fruitful, I would say stay away from this episode. It wasn't, in my opinion, all that great.